Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the all-new edition of the Mac and Chuck Show, starring your host, Chuck Dill, and host, Scott McKenzie. Tonight's special guest and special co-host, Nick Drago.
Oh, there's the fade.
There. Yeah, one of these days I'll get better at nailing the post on that, but, well, I'll have to work on that new one a little bit, I guess.
Welcome to December 12th.
Yeah. How you doing tonight?
I'm all right, I guess.
Yeah? Anything big going on? Anything new?
Work.
Work.
You had something big over the weekend.
I did. It was a very busy weekend for me. We finished up our last performance of the Christmas in Concert at Alfresco Productions. It ended about 4 o'clock, and so I went over there, had something to eat with some of my co-performers, and then rushed here to get everything set up and ready to go, and worked through a couple technicalities. It happens.
Hey, the main point is we fixed it.
Yes, we fixed it, and we are here to bring you the wonderful entertainment that all of you have come to know, and, well, I think some of you love. I don't know. I know we got a couple fans out there.
How about maybe kind of like?
Tolerate. How's that?
There you go.
Tolerate.
Oh, look at that. Here come the reviews.
Kim's a huge fan of the Mac and Chuck show. She's a huge fan of Alfresco. She came to all 3 productions. And
come on, that's not what that says.
She says this guy can sing, really sing.
Okay, see.
Yeah.
Are you blushing over there behind your microphone a little? You got him, Kim. You got him.
Just a little bit. It was really a great show. You know, it's always a rush to be on stage. It's always fun to do that. And this, you know, as most of you who follow me on Facebook have seen, you know, quite a few pictures of my daughter and I performing, and there's actually a video of the two of us performing right now on my Facebook page, which check it out after the show. Don't leave yet. But yeah, it was really great, you know, to spend that time with my daughter and share those memories and you know, just pretty awesome. Plus, we got to do one of my, you know, what my dad told me was one of his favorite Christmas songs. So, you know, it definitely held a very special meaning to me this year.
That's good. Let's see. Let's jump right into it. Random thought.
Yeah, let's hear it, begin.
Have you ever thought? Sometimes I try to. How much different the a cappella groups sound from the 40s throughout the decades to now? It's a different. I don't know. Maybe you know what I'm trying to say. Maybe I don't have the right verbiage, but it's a different sound. I don't know if it has to do with the acoustics. The sound equipment, then I don't know what it has to do with, but you can really tell, you know, listening to Christmas music, you know, kind of really pointed out like the Andrews Sisters and the harmonies as opposed to female groups singing now. It's just really different.
So we're talking a cappella, or we're talking like doo-wop groups versus like multi-singer groups these days?
I don't know. You tell me.
So I think that when you look at a group,
you know what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah, I mean, okay. If you look at a group like Pentatonics, you know, I mean, they definitely have a different sound,
right,
than, you know, like Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even when they would do their a cappella stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious if it's more of a style thing. Surely equipment was much different back then.
Right.
You had a much more warm sound, I think. And I'm just sharing my thoughts on your random thought. You know,
I see what you did.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a difference. For sure. We had an a cappella quartet at the Christmas show in Alfresco, actually. And man, they were good. They were just really good. By the way, if you get a chance, check them out. I believe they're called Wayback. Really great group. But yeah, I can see where that might be an observation in the music industry, music world. Yeah. Now, I think you said you had 2 random thoughts this week, didn't you?
Well, you know, you ready to throw a little more gray in your beard? Everybody remembers watching MTV as teens, I guess.
You mean back when they used to play music?
Yes, back when it was music television. Remember a guy named Kurt Loder?
I do remember Kurt Loder.
He's in his late 70s.
You can die now.
Bye-bye.
I'm here all week. I'm
Uh,
here all week.
and it just adds a little bit more of this stuff here.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, I get it. So I'd like to thank tonight's sponsors, Weathervane Ice Cream.
All right.
Yeah, we want to give them a shout out, thank them again for, just kind of listening to the show. We appreciate that. So,
Local
they've got
business.
what's up?
Local business.
Local business, absolutely. They great fall menu also. So if you get a chance, check them out. They're not just about ice cream. Check them out. They got great tacos. They've got great soups, great chili. So yeah, check out their fall menu, and just help support those guys. And speaking of the concert earlier with Alfresco Productions, always happy to have them on board as well. And it was a great show. The first show for that we've done there in man almost 2 years ever since COVID started, and they've got some great things coming up for this season. So give them a check out at alfrescoproductions.org, and just check them out. And they've got great things coming down the pipe. So and I know of a couple other things going on in Granite City I can't share yet, but man, things are about to explode in this town, and I don't mean in a bad way. So,
What?
so keep your ear to the ground. Watch the downtown area because man, there are just some things that out there that are just really about to happen. So really excited about that.
Now,
Kim, thank you for the comment or the. Go ahead.
the kudos.
The kudos.
What
Yes.
what is maybe you
Kim's
can
kudos.
That's another segment. What is the Tinseltown? Maybe you can explain that.
So that's a great question because if someone does know, and I got a feeling that Kim Pearson may know this, but if someone does know exactly what Tinseltown is, please feel free to let us know because from what I understand, just kind of a Christmas themed place where you can. I thought I saw someone post earlier about maybe some adult beverages that were there. They are located in the old LaSalle's building. So check them out. I mean, if you guys know, let us know. I mean, because we definitely like to, check that place out. And now that the show is over and things are starting to wind down for me, I'm hopefully going to have a chance to check them out before they're not Tinseltown anymore. So, Kim, do you know what Tinseltown is? You know what's going on over there? If so, let us know. Or if you're listening tonight, just let us know.
Oh, here we go.
There we are. I knew I could count on my friend Kim.
Ooh, I
Pop
like
up
that. I
holiday.
like that idea. I
Yeah,
like that
pop up
idea.
holiday bar changes with the holiday drinks and snacks.
I dig that.
Sweet.
So they're gonna have balls falling and balloons falling off the ceiling on New Year's.
You said balls
Oh
falling.
Jesus!
I'm
Come
just
on,
curious.
man!
Come Valentine's Day, will it be Lover's Lane?
People with arrows getting stabbed. Ow!
Good Lord, let's hope that's not the case.
Liability issues, insurance.
Have our own episode of Hawkeye going on here. So Kim says I would almost bet. All right, awesome. So yeah, I mean that's kind of a cool idea. It's a great use of space in downtown Granite. So yeah, very cool.
And here's something I also want to throw out there. Looking at pictures, seeing Santa's cabin back this year is big. Growing up as a kid, seeing
Yeah.
that all the time. It's really nice to see our childhood. Well, mine in particular, since you were a Southern Missouri boy until you were double digits.
Yeah, I came up here when I was 8, first time.
Okay. Well, it's really nice seeing, stuff that I remember from my childhood, especially getting refurbished and put back into use. And it's really good to see that. And a lot of people from what I've read on Facebook and other places have really enjoyed that. So that's
Yeah.
good to see.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. The new mayor here in town he's really him and his administration are really just working their tail ends off to make Granite just a great place to live. And I won't say to live again because it's going to be different than what you and I grew up in. But I mean, they're really just working really hard to make Granite City a tourism spot. I mean, at one point, Granite City was an all-American town. So I mean, I think it's super cool to see first of all the job that he's doing and the people that he's bringing on board. I think he's making all the right decisions. Kim says the amount of work is crazy. Brenda Whitaker and crew did a great job. I mean, Brenda is being involved in the city now. I mean that's awesome. She's really got her thumb on the pulse of what's going on here, and I think we're going to see great things for our fair city.
Our fair city.
Yeah. What do you? So, what? Since we're on this topic right now, and we are going to get to the meat of the show here in just a few minutes when Nick is going to be joining us here soon. We're going to be talking about the Lennon conspiracy. Some will call it the Beatles prophecy, the Lennon prophecy, something along those lines. But Mac, if you were to think back, just to when you still had that Christmas magic about you, what would you say just kind of hits home the most when you think about that time as a kid here in Granite?
In Granite?
Yeah.
Come on, man! You're asking me to think back like 40 years. Good lord.
Well, I mean, in the area because you spent some time in Madison also, right?
6 years.
Yeah.
And I was up to the age of 6. I don't really remember a lot of that. But what I do, just as a kid, was December would hit, or actually the day after Thanksgiving would hit. We'd put up our tree during the weekend, decorate the house. I'd always flip through, yes, kids, this thing called a TV guide. Look for all the Christmas cartoon stuff like that. And I just really, as a kid, when I came home from school, the lights would get plugged in. I mean, that's all there was to it for me.
Yeah.
As I got to be a teenager, I would sit next to the tree in a corner and just listen to my radio. So that was, having a birthday the day before really, really isolates the holiday, I guess you would say, for me.
Okay. Now, favorite Christmas cartoon?
Charlie Brown Christmas.
Okay.
I think we discussed this last year, but Charlie Brown Christmas, then Mickey's Christmas Carol, then a obscure one called "Twas the Night Before Christmas." It's a Rankin.
Love "Twas the Night Before Christmas."
So it's a Rankin Bass cartoon.
Yeah, love that animation. Like being kind of a fan of animation, I absolutely loved the animation that was in "Twas the Night Before Christmas."
So also, I'm trying to think what else was it. I think Frosty was a Rankin Bass.
I think you're right.
God,
Folks, while Mac's thinking about that, why don't you tell us what your favorite Christmas cartoon or even program was? Hallmark movies don't count because they're all the same 3 plots and the same 12 actors.
Just with Christmas, fill in the blank.
Right. So yeah, let us know kind of what your favorite Christmas things were, and we're gonna be inviting Nick on here before too long.
Whenever he pops in,
he'll be popping in soon for us.
Jack Frost.
And Jack Frost was a great one.
Rudolph Shiny New Year. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
All right, now Lisa's put down one that I really liked also, and this was like
I vaguely remember that one.
This is the epitome of the 80s, and that's the California Raisins Christmas.
Speaking of obscure.
Yeah, so if you don't know who the California Raisins are,
look it up.
You will be entertained. I promise you.
And I said this last year, but just to reiterate, because it's been 12 months and people have short memories at our age. The one thing I remember about that particular special was the guy walking through the square next to the fountain trying to sing the wassailing song, but he says, "Here we come a waffling." For some reason, that just sticks out in my head, and I don't know why.
Nancy says claymation.
That was claymation.
So, yeah. Claymation, man, I'll tell you what, you want to talk about some grueling work?
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, that's some crazy stuff. But it did have its own special style, which was kind of nice to do.
Definitely set itself apart.
Yeah. So, we tonight's show, we're talking about the Beatles and just kind of like their meteoric rise to fame and Beatlemania. And you've heard it said that there are Beatles people and there are Elvis people. I am definitely not an Elvis guy. However, I think that there are some similarities between the two, and we'll be getting kind of touching base with all that here before too long. Mac, do you have a big or a favorite Beatles song by chance?
Now, I'm not, the drop dead, die hard fan. I do enjoy the music.
Right.
Um, there's something to be said. Um, just lyrically about, and I'm gonna say an album because um, I'm gonna say Rubber Soul
Okay.
for me. It doesn't have to be any specific. I'm just talking where they started getting into the out of the bubblegum type style.
Yeah.
They still had some, but Norwegian Wood. I mean, that's not really bubblegum at that point.
Have you heard the lyrics to Norwegian Wood?
So, for that, I think that's where where they start transcending.
So you feel that they were getting better and just kind of like now? Do you feel they got better, or do you feel that they were just able to keep up with the times?
Well, that was what 65, I think, maybe early 66. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, they were only out for over here for 2 years, and I can't count the number of albums they put out.
Yeah.
That was released December 3rd, 1965. So it was 65, early 66. But I call that kind of the middle year, the middle ground of their career, just because of where they came from with the Ed Sullivan debut up to this, and then 2 years later they're into the White Album. So
Yeah.
I mean, it just in that quick of a time, it just.
Now you're going to know more about this than I do on the White Album, and I may be wrong here, but is that the one that had Revolution #9?
I think.
Okay, because I know that that's like got one of the biggest, and I think it's within the top 10 rock and roll screams. At the beginning of it, where Paul just lets out this blood curdling, like, it's for me, it's probably one of the best rock and roll screams. I mean, now I would
Yes.
say that Axl Rose has got quite a few great screams himself, but
Right.
there was definitely the White Album was definitely a turning point in their career, I think, and I think it got to a point. Um, like I think honestly, have you seen the Beatles documentary on Disney Plus right now?
I did watch it.
Okay, I mean, really great stuff there, and they brought up some really good points, and I think we may touch on those a little bit today, also, particularly when it comes to the Lennon McCartney kind of feuds, if you will, and just kind of how, there's even a point in there where John's like, he says that Paul's the boss, and it's like, that whole show is an interesting take, fly on the wall, kind of overall viewpoint. But what we want to do now is, before we get too far into this, we would like to, bring in our special co-host, Nick. Nick is going to be joining us again. He's part of the new format. He's going to be joining us every second Sunday of the month, and we're just thrilled to pieces to have him here. And we're going to bring him on. Nick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello, folks. How's it going?
Good evening.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I was going to run upstairs and grab some earbuds. You guys kind of sound low.
Okay.
I'll be
All right, cool. Well, we'll bring Nick back on when he comes in. Nick has got some really interesting perspective as far as, Mark David Chapman, as far as, the assassination of John Lennon, and, the Beatles' rise to fame, just kind of all the way starting from their time performing with Pete Best and Brian is Epstein. Do you know how to pronounce it?
One of the two.
One of the two, yeah.
Now, I don't know. Can I show the book cover on this? Is this going to get copyrighted? I didn't know if.
No. I think you can show it. Yeah.
This is a book of what we're going to cover tonight. It kind of says examination of the death clues. So it's a really good book. I've read it before. I bought it to kind of scan over it again to kind of refresh myself for the show. And it raises a lot of good points that I find interesting, and I'll share those tonight as we go along.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest. It's interesting. The book says the death clues of the Beatles, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding the Beatles, and I think that we're going to cover quite a bit of that tonight. And even the part where or the building that John Lennon was shot at, man, there's a lot of like just crazy stuff around the Dakota also.
Really?
And yeah, I think we're going to go and bring Nick back on now. Oh, maybe not.
Maybe not. He said, no. Right when you were ready to push the button, he said, no, you're not.
I know. Hope I didn't ban him. I don't think I banned him. I think I'm not sure what happened there.
To bring down the hammer? What'd you do?
But anyway, so Mac, while we wait for Nick to kind of come back on, why don't you go into a little bit about the book, what the book covers, and just kind of what you found most interesting during the research of this particular show.
Well, the book is written by a Beatles fan, and we'll bring Nick on real quick.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him on.
Sorry,
there
guys.
he is.
Oh, you're fine.
Sorry about that.
What I was touching on, Chuck kind of asked me to go over the book and, kind of a basic overview. This comes from a guy who was a lifelong Beatles fan, was hypnotized by the music like everyone else was. Something didn't sit well with him, so he did all this research. This is just an opinion book mostly, but it raises a lot of good points on, why he thought this happened and, just from, and Chuck, you'll be able to touch on these as we go from a spiritual point of view.
Sure.
Maybe not truths, but what more of it. And you'll know what I'm talking about when we get to that point. But what it starts out with, two of the biggest clues were their literal overnight popularity from doing clubs, not having anybody there, to talking to Brian Epstein, and all of a sudden the next day they're, within a week they're exploding, selling out clubs, doing all this stuff, and there's, whether you may agree or may not agree, there's part of the claim in this book that John sold his soul to the devil for international fame, women, everything that comes with it. And Chuck, you and I discussed before the show started that the normal terms of the deal, so to speak, was 20 years.
Can I just say real quick that I think that, when John got saddled with Yoko Ono, that should have been penance enough.
All right, here we go. There went our 5 followers. Way to go, Chuck. But like I said, a 20-year time frame. And that's a lot of numbers that you hear in biblical things or things of that nature, is there's a 20-year time frame. Mm-hmm. And the lyrics at the beginning of Sgt. Pepper, 20 years ago today, Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. So,
right.
As you go throughout the book, John saying that we're bigger than Jesus and all this, it really, if you take that context and rolled into the book, it makes sense and it kind of makes you wonder, which, I guess that's what it's for, is to kind of make you, question these things from a logical point of view and things like that.
Well, there's no doubt, there's all kinds of occult symbolism in the Beatles, especially since 1966. Also, 1966 was the year of the founding of the Satanic Church, Satanic Bible, the Church of Satan, and the Satanic Bible was published in that year, and that was supposed to be a year, as far as what I've read, it's supposed to be the year to kick that off, to kind of start a new era, 1966. And you actually have in that year, in those digits, you have 2 6s and a 9, which in the world of magic and in magical practices, that's the same number, because It's the same shape. And numbers and letters in magic, they're sigils. They're just components in a ritual.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an inverted 6.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But going through that, like I said, and Nick, I'll let you touch on this next. It kind of lends the credence to a creepy man coming out of nowhere stalking this guy in 1980, and what happened? It was almost, from what I read, almost 20 years to the day, almost, from the rise until John got shot.
And Nick, you have an interesting perspective.
Well,
go ahead.
I think I didn't know that was like 20 years, like December 8th was when he was killed. That was 20 years to the day that what?
From the time that they started their rise. You know,
Okay.
They got together in 1960 as the Quarrymen. You know, kind of led up to the Cavern Club, and then the fame that started off in the end of '63 into coming to America in '64.
Right. Okay. There's no, what I think what was behind Chapman, was I think he was a mind controlled, MK Ultra assassin, and I'll like get into that if for like the listeners don't know what that is. Like the now could that have been the work of the devil? I have no problem believing that our intelligence communities aren't seated in the work of something very evil. Oh yeah, but I think that he was a mind controlled assassin. Now MK Ultra, for those that don't know, it was a government mind control program. They actually did research and learned how to control people through hypnosis and drugs and different methods. And this is a real thing. This was this kind of thing that conspiracy theorists used to talk about and get called crazy for. And then they're through the I think it was the Church Committee. It was kind of the CIA was on trial in the mid 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of came out that they were really doing mind control experiments on unsuspecting citizens. And actually, Bill Clinton, when he was president, apologized for this. So this is not some kind of, talk of like, conspiracy lore or anything, legend or anything. This is the real deal. Now, I don't know if any kind of government came forward and really said, yeah, we were making assassins.
Mm-hmm.
But John, basically, it would work like this. They would pick somebody like John Chapman, just somebody that works, cross their paths, which I'll go back into how I think they crossed the path of John. I will go into how I think the intelligence communities came upon Mark Chapman.
Mm.
But basically what happened is they, intersected, and Chapman was chosen to be an assassin, and he was mind controlled to carry this thing out through hypnosis. And he has a lot of the same earmarks that other assassins, like Sirhan Sirhan, the would-be assassin John Hinckley, they all three had like a lot of things in common. They primarily one of them was the book Catcher in the Rye, and it has been surmised over and over in all kinds of, you could read it, and actually in the movie Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, he reads Catcher in the Rye, and they kind of go into it, but it's believed that was a tool to a programming tool. Also, the movie The Wizard of Oz was also used as a tool, in this conditioning of, this subject into getting them to carry out this deed, this mission. So I believe that what was going on the night of the murder, I believe that, Mark Chapman, he flew to New York in October of 1980, and he was with the sole purpose of shooting John Lennon. And then this is really weird. He went to a movie. He saw the movie Ordinary People, and he had some kind of spiritual revelation. And then he flew back home to Hawaii, and he didn't do it. And he told his wife, "No, I'm not going to do it," and all this. And then he comes back in December with the purpose of killing John Lennon again. And of course, as that time Lennon got killed. I believe what happened was that he flew. It's really odd that he was unemployed at the time. And how does an unemployed man have, time and money to just fly from Hawaii to New York twice in the span of just a few months? Right. When Chapman was arrested, he had $2,200 in cash in his pockets. Now, it's a little weird. You know what I mean? So I believe that Chapman ended up at the Dakota apartment building where John Lennon lived, and I believe he met when he was there, he met a handler from from the intelligence community that fed him trigger words to get him, when John arrived in the limousine back at, because he waited around and waited around for him.
Mhm.
And I believe when John came home, that he was triggered to carry out that operation. Now, who was the handler? This is really interesting. Who was this man? Who was the person? Who was the agent that that triggered him? Gave him the trigger word and then met with the police and all this. Well, you saw chapter 27 the other night, right, Scott?
Yeah.
I did.
Or, I'm sorry, Chuck. Did you see it, Scott?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
we both watched it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, now do you remember in the beginning, like he meets this doorman, and the doorman was kind of rude to him, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
The first guy.
Right.
And the other guy, Latin doorman, comes into the scene, and I thought that Jared Leto, the way he directed that, it was very kind of ominous when that guy came upon the scene. That man's name was Jose Perdermo.
Right.
Jose Perdermo was a member of a group called Operation 40, which was an elite group of assassins that took part in the Bay of Pigs invasion and other things. And
Oh, wow.
that man was the doorman that talked to Chapman right up until the time that John Lennon was shot.
And you know what's really interesting about that, Nick, is so for those of you who don't know, Chapter 27, was basically a movie, and it was based on interviews with Mark David Chapman, about that time, during his life and that whole span. What I really found interesting was how informative the doorman was, and it's not just that he was any doorman; he was just kind of a substitute doorman, for that particular day,
Absolutely.
and he was, for someone who's supposed to be protecting the lives and the lifestyle of those who lived at the Dakota, which the story behind the Dakota is really an interesting one in and of itself. But he was extremely informative for Mark David Chapman, that someone who may have been under some kind of hypnosis or mind control, I mean, it was just really odd how helpful he was to let him know, how long he may be gone, when he may be back,
Yeah, he'll be coming
or
back. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and just kind of
Be in a more
encouraged him.
right. You would think, and when the police arrived on the scene, they didn't believe that Chapman did it. And the thing is, Chapman, after Lennon was shot, I mean, I believe this is what I really think happened. I think that he was fed those trigger words. He pulled out his gun, he pointed, and he shot blanks. And there was another man in another area in the alcove where Lennon walked, and that man did the shooting.
Interesting.
They weren't going to let Chapman do it. Chapman just thinks he did it, and they let him think he did it, because the first thing Perdomo says to Chapman, he runs over to him. He says, "Do you know what you've done?" He said, "I shot John Lennon." He said, and then he kicks. Yeah. So, yeah, that's powerful, man. That's no one's going to tell me that a guy that used to be an assassin for the CIA was on the scene that night. They had a very good reason to want to kill John Lennon. I think it was totally political. 1 week, I think it was December 1st, 1980, this woman named Mae Brussel, she was kind of an investigative journalist, had a talk show host, or was a host of a talk show, radio host. And she said, well, the election had just taken place. Reagan had just won the election, Reagan-Bush. And she said, well, the Reagan-Bush agenda has, the assassination groups of the 1960s are well in place to carry out the Reagan-Bush war machine. 7 days later, John Lennon, an anti-war activist, was killed.
Now it's interesting because, I mean, who was it? Was Ford? I think So my history here is terrible. Is it Ford before Reagan? Help me out here, Mac.
Carter.
Carter. Okay, Carter. Like even back, during the administration before, like they tried to, get Lennon out of the country and like
Oh
have him
yeah.
deported and all kinds of like he was pretty much political enemy number one,
Oh yeah.
and I'm just curious because of all of the influence and charisma that the Beatles had, like was this something because even though the Beatles had broken up, what was it in the 70 or 1970,
Mhm.
even though they had broken up, John Lennon was still a powerhouse politically and figuratively, and just to get rid of him, and yes, I mean it meant that a nation would have to go into mourning, but what are we always hearing about even now about for the greater good,
Right.
things like that. So
In uh in 1971, this man named what was his name, John Sinclair. He was busted. He with 2 joints. Okay, and he got 10 years. Okay, so there was this freedom rally with a lot of known activists of the day, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, Bobby Seale of the Black Panther Party. They were there. They had some musicians there, and they asked John. There was a freedom rally,
mhm.
for John Sinclair.
Mhm.
Well, John and Yoko showed up. They played it. It was a big rally. It was huge, and the Michigan Supreme Court the next Monday freed John Sinclair, let him out of prison. They didn't want it. They didn't want the headaches. Well, this impassioned, or kind of, kind of impassioned Lennon, and kind of, he had this idea to, when Nixon ran again for re-election, John Lennon wanted to have a concert. He wanted to throw a tour and perform in every city where Nixon was campaigning. And he started to plan this. He was finding out where Nixon was going to campaign, and he was booking dates in those cities. Nixon got wind of this, and that's when the deportation process started. That's when he was served papers from immigration, and that's when John Lennon started talking about he's seeing people following him. He's hearing things on his telephone clicking. He knows people, cars following his cab, and this. And he said they wanted him to know that they were following him.
Just kind of spook him a little bit,
Yeah, scare him, harass him,
maybe
and
give him to leave on his own.
years until then. Like after Nixon resigned, actually, it was on the day that his son Sean was born. His lawyer called him and said, "You won. You're getting your green card." So.
Yep, you got blood in the states now. So,
but I mean,
yeah.
I would think anybody that with any kind of political idealism that's not going to jive with him, like for instance Reagan and Bush, they wanted to come in and I'm sure they didn't have ideas that would jive with John Lennon's ideology, and
Right.
They knew it, and they're like, well, he's going to be a thorn in the side, let's get him out of there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you
that's what
figure
I
the
think
Cold
happened.
War was, you figure the Cold War was going on at that point, which was soon to escalate into what we were concerned about, another world war or a nuclear war or something like that, So, there was definitely a desire to beef up the military, and you can't have a global influential peacemaker, running around
Yeah.
and telling people no war and basically stirring the pot. It's interesting, and Mac, I'd like you to go into this a little bit, based on what you were able to garner from the book. We talked a little bit about the and Nick, I'm not sure if you were with us yet. We talked a little bit about the selling your soul to the devil kind of thing, for the Beatles. And then, we talked a little bit about some of the clues, especially some of the mystery surrounding Paul McCartney's quote unquote death, or whether or not, is Paul dead? I mean, we know
Right.
that, there was a huge thing about that. And we know that, for some reason, there was a Paul McCartney lookalike contest, so, I mean, if what would be the point of that or whatever. But Mac, I'd like you to go into a little bit, if you don't mind, just kind of what you garner from the 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 occult aspect of the Beatles, and to kind of, and maybe we can marry this a little bit with what Nick has brought to us, kind of about the political reasons that to get John Lennon out of the country, and just kind of the timing of the death, and maybe the mind control thing. Does it play into effect with the voices that Mark David Chapman was hearing in his head, or was it just kind of a big conspiracy, or something from the very beginning?
That's
Um,
interesting. I think the voice, like I said, I'm not doubting that the Beatles dabbled in magic, in black magic, and they had all kinds of interests in that. And I think they were kind of, you see this in, I'm not trying to take it someplace else, but like you see in rock and roll, even not just rock and pop music, I should say, like today. You know what I mean? And really throughout the ages, you see a little bit of little gothic, you know what I mean? Little goth, little Satanism put in, not Satan, but you know what I'm saying? Just a little of the occult language.
Yeah.
Especially you see it now, my God, the Travis Scott concert, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You watch the MTV Awards or the Grammys or the American Music Awards, and it's the same thing. There's a lot of, I think over the past 5 years especially, there's been a lot of like, just like the motifs they used, fire and
a lot of imagery that's going on there.
Up all the time. They're always doing this thing, which is supposed to be, well, it has like several meanings of it now. Means a lot of things, but I don't think they mean okay. And they're always doing this like Illuminati kind of thing. Like, I don't know what's behind that, but no one's going to tell me that nothing is behind that.
Right.
I mean,
right.
And I think like the Beatles also did those, the devil horns and the 666. I'm trying to get my camera right.
Yeah.
They did that on the yellow. I think it was the Yellow Submarine album cover, or in the jacket and the inset or whatever. And their album cover art is just chock full of satanic symbolism and occult symbolism, black magic symbolism.
Right. And the color yellow plays a lot in a lot of that as well, as far as like some color theory and things like that goes. The reds and the yellows, which if you notice, a lot of the Beatles albums have a lot of those colors on there. And so I mean, I was reading a little bit about that. Some of the imagery just in color in and of itself. Mac, I would like to get your opinion on that. And everyone, as you're watching and you're listening, give us some feedback. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what your thoughts are. If you agree with us, let us know that. If you think we're way off base, let us know that you think we're off base, and just let us know why on both counts.
And I'll
let us know.
Sorry, we're all Beatles fans, I think, aren't we?
Oh yeah, I mean, we like to
even their solo stuff. When Paul McCartney and Wings and John and
yeah,
I love all their stuff.
Yeah. And as a photographer, I gotta say I like Linda McCartney's photography also. I mean, she's got some amazing work out there. But but yeah, folks, let us know, and then Mac, let us just kind of let us know kind of what what you learned and what your thoughts are.
I want to go back a little bit and kind of touch on what you guys talked about previously. Number one, Sirhan claims that he heard voices as well.
Yeah.
If you talk about mind control and the CIA, where did LSD come from?
Yeah.
John Lennon actually said, "We got to thank the CIA for LSD." Yeah.
So my biggest thing in reading the book was, and I'll keep coming back to this, was the literal overnight explosion, because it was literally overnight. Like I said, you go into clubs one day and you have a smattering of people there listening to the music, and literally the next night there's women everywhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about the hypnotic sound of the music and things like that, the melodies, things of that nature. And something else that always made me question, especially after reading the book, I've heard of songwriters writing songs, brilliance, like Brian Wilson, for example, that had an auditory issue where he heard the melodies. But Lennon and McCartney wrote so many songs so quickly. So that really kind of gives you pause, like, where did all this stuff come from in that short span of time?
Yeah, where
Yeah.
did inspiration come from?
Right. And I mean, and if you really think about it, in the book, they talk about John's childhood to where his mother didn't want him. You know, the older he got, he had to go live with his aunt. His aunt ruled by an iron fist. He became very distraught, very rebellious, very, and a very negative attitude, which, again, if you know occult, the occult and demons, for lack of a better example, are drawn to that negativity. So, in progressing through that, the points that are made in the book, you're like, I may or may not agree with that, but I can see where that's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So and again, I'll just keep going back to one night, nobody. Next night, women screaming, and it just steamrolled and snowballed from that point. And to this day, I just find that phenomenal. You hear of overnight success. You're talking, a year or two. That's considered. I mean, no, this was literally the next night.
Yeah, and when you look at that a little bit, we're not just talking about girls showing up that are screaming. We're talking about young
Hysterics.
women, girls that are hysterical. They're it's almost like they're possessed, and when you look at the word idol, technically the word idol basically means that anything that takes place of God, and when you look at it from a spiritual standpoint like that, the Beatles were little g gods, big G gods to some of these people, and I mean, it was Beatlemania is probably an understatement for, what was going on. And what do these guys, when you quote unquote make a deal with the devil, I mean, what do you promise? Fame, riches, money, all this stuff that, like you mentioned, Mac, the John Lennon did not have these things growing up, and when you are trying to attract somebody or trying to make deals with them or something like that, you offer them things that they've never had before, and you offer them the things that are the most precious to you. And a lot of times it's not money, it's acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about a level of acceptance unlike anything seen on the face of the planet before, go ahead.
It's fun. It's funny that you use that word acceptance, because that's what he was thriving for his whole childhood. So I think that word is very apropos to explain overall John Lennon as a young adult.
So when you look at this, and so we mentioned earlier the quote unquote 20-year deal with the devil. I'm kind of on the fence about that myself, about whether there's like an actual deal with the devil. I mean, I think that you can live your life definitely in a way that glorifies yourself. And when you look at the actual true meaning of the word Satanism is not, worshiping the devil. Satanism is actually the worship of oneself. When you really get down to the technical aspect of it, and it's the omission of God, so it's basically, I'm God, I'm the one in charge of me, I'm going to worship myself, I'm going to do what I want for what I want. And eventually, there does come a price for that. And in the case of, John Lennon's situation, he, the overnight sensation, I can't explain that. I can bet that there were supernatural powers involved in that. I mean, I would be 100% on board with that. All that would do is fuel more of yourself thinking, hey, this is what I'm doing. Look what I'm doing. No one else is doing it for me. Look what I'm doing. And then, you get to a point where you become too big for your britches, so to speak. And Nick, I think that kind of comes into play with what you were talking about, that, his comment, first of all, about, hey, we're bigger than Jesus, and that's going to piss a lot of people off right there, just in general. And then, you get the hardcore right wing, people that are threatened by this, and they need to eliminate this threat. And with the resources that they had, Nick, you talking about the MK, was it MK Assassins? Is that what you call them?
Ultra.
MK Ultra. You talk about the resources that they have, then it kind of really all ties in into itself. And just because I don't want to exclude him from this, because he was part of the Beatles, the sudden death of Pete Best, I mean, I'm sure that played a lot into where the Beatles were going as well. So it's almost, in my opinion, it's almost like this supernatural involvement. And I'm not talking to good supernatural involvement. The supernatural involvement that started even before the Beatles' overnight success, was already being lined up for them to be this huge person and this huge influence, and to be carried out basically, like you mentioned, the 20 years later, using Mark David Chapman from a government standpoint to eliminate this threat. I mean, here we are 41 years later still talking about this, and John Lennon's death still has an effect on people that weren't even alive,
Yeah.
when he was around. So anyway, those are kind of my thoughts. Not that anyone asked, but but I can see where they would tie in though.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think right before John Lennon was killed, he did an interview with Playboy magazine where he talked about how the Beatles were an experiment, and he didn't really go on and on about that, but some people have surmised that they were an experiment of the Tavistock Institute, like basically, which was a construct of British intelligence. And they were basically a tool to kind of engineer, be a kind of social engineering tool, for the government to, sow division if they need to, or whatever. They were just basically, if they owned the Beatles, then they owned the Beatles people. You know what I mean?
Fans, yeah.
So, and I think what happened was maybe the guys maybe they took that deal and they didn't like it, and they wanted to get out of it. You know what I mean? And yeah.
So let me ask you. That brings up an interesting point because we've kind of been talking about the deal with the devil, a little bit. So maybe that was to your point of social experiment, because I think you're right 100% that if John told all these people, or Paul or Ringo or George told all these people to follow them off of the bridge, I'm sure there would be a fair amount of people that would do that. So
Yeah.
if we talk, or let's look at the Jim Jones kind of thing, if the Beatles were like, hey, everybody eat a bullet, for us, or drink whatever, we send out, but what if the deal, like you mentioned, it wasn't necessarily struck with the devil, so to speak, but was struck, with the government, like you said, after 10 years, they'd had enough, I mean, because I agree with you, Mac, where you're talking about the resources that they had to put all this music out as quickly and rapidly as they did. I mean, maybe there were more people that were writing this stuff, and McCartney and Lennon were just kind of taking the. And I'm going to throw another
There's a
wrench in
theory
this
out
too.
there of that they weren't writing it.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, maybe Paul at one point, 1963, decided, you know what, screw this, I'm done, I can't do it anymore. And the British government's like, well, we can't have this. So, if Paul did, quote unquote, die in a car accident, they would almost have to replace him,
Right.
To keep the experiment going. So,
And basically, that's what I really think happened. I don't know that if he really died, because I think if he really died in a car accident, like the legend says and all that, I don't think the remaining Beatles would treat his death that way. You know what I mean? Make songs about it, put their, make the art about it. I almost think that the whole Paul is dead thing was a psychological operation. Was just like a, well, they had to keep it going, yes, but maybe it could have been, let's see if we can do this. Let's see let's see who notices this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was the plan all along. I don't know. What I'm kind of curious about though, how do you sell your soul to the devil? Like, is there a magic ritual? I mean, there probably is. There probably some kind of
from what the book states, it's more of like a verbal contract. Yeah. Not a contract per se. It's more of like a verbal, you give me this in 20 years, you get me type thing.
Yeah.
So
know that the deal has been made. These are just my questions.
Mm-hmm.
How the deal has been made, and in what way do you get confirmation? Yeah, in what way do you get confirmation that the deal has been made? Do you communicate on a Ouija board, or
it didn't really go into it. It was very vague in how the contract was executed.
So
It was very vague in how the contract was executed. Really didn't go into specifics.
These are just my questions, you
Right.
know.
No, that makes sense.
I'm sure there is some kind of ritual that
Mhm.
people try. And you know, here's the thing about black magic and all that. It's like you don't really have to believe in it, but do believe that there are people in high and low places that do believe in it and that
Sure.
do practice it to whatever result.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
So to give you kind of a faith-based or spiritual viewpoint of that, and this is why I don't necessarily know that you necessarily can quote unquote sell your soul to the devil, because when you look at it from, first of all, if you believe in the devil, you have to believe in God. Period. There's no getting around it. If you're going to believe in the devil, you have to believe in God. One does not exist without the other. In saying that and believing in the devil and in believing in God, the devil doesn't need your soul, because, until you come to a place of faith and, say what you will, it's the way I believe, until you become a place of faith in Jesus Christ, the devil's already got you. He doesn't need to buy your soul. Like, there's nothing you need to do for the devil to, take your soul when you die. Now, what I think could happen is there could be people in there who are influencing other people to, the reason I would say to strike a deal with the devil, so to speak, would be to lead other people away from God. And that is really the only benefit that I could see that the devil or Satan himself would have in striking a deal with someone. Because as far as your personal soul goes, as long as he keeps you away from God, he's got you. He could care two craps. He doesn't care if you're off doing great things for the world or whatever, or if you're off, murdering babies. I mean, I know that's an extreme thing, but I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. But if he's going to use you as a tool to lead other people and distract other people from God, that's kind of where I would see the benefit to that would be. And, offering the fame and the fortune and things like that. To answer your question, Nick, I don't necessarily know that a deal with the devil is a rite or a ritual or anything like that, but it's more of a process of the people that you trust in your life and the people that you follow and the way that you live your life, because obviously if you get in with the right people in any industry, they're going to take you where you want to go. And if you avoid those people, then you may not get to where you want to go, but you're going to be in a much different place. So I wouldn't necessarily, and this is strictly, conjecture and opinion on my part, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's any kind of ritual or whatever. I would think would be strictly pomp and circumstance, because it would serve no purpose to sign a contract, because he's already got you. I think if you wanted to have all these great things, again, with the self-worship, the money, and the power and the fame and the girls or the men, if you're a woman and all that stuff, I think that would be more or less along the lines of the decisions that an individual person would make to live that type of lifestyle and living apart from God. And then it gets to a point where your time is up, and whether it's, 20 years, 10 years, or whatever, if you die without God or you die without Christ, again, my opinion based on my faith, then he has won. He's gotten what he wants, which is something he already had, plus all along the line, the 10 years that they were famous, the 20 years that they were, in the public's eye, then quote unquote, the devil has gotten his due, so to speak. I mean, I hope that makes sense without sounding kind of, cuckoo bird, but that's kind of the way I, kind of, kind of the way I see it. And I think that's how, if it were just me, that's how I would answer your question. I wouldn't think there's any type of actual ritual or anything like that, but it's more of a decision-making path, to follow your own self and your own desires and things and eventually, we see it in rock and roll all the time. And in fame, the excess leads to self-destruction, so
Too much of anything can lead to self-destruction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting though. Have you heard like Bob Dylan? Did you see the Bob Dylan interview where he talks about selling his soul?
Oh, I didn't.
Up with the bargain and with the Grand Chief, and I know Kanye that he sold his soul to the devil. and other people throughout, the other, pop stars.
Who is that blues guitarist? I saw a documentary on Netflix. He was a blues guitarist from like
Robert Johnson.
Yes,
Dude, there's a
Robert
movie
Johnson.
called Crossroads. Old Satchmo.
that
Old
was-
Scratch.
That was eerie.
Yeah,
Very eerie.
He couldn't play,
Right.
and the next night, the next day or whatever, he comes back, and he's rocking them. You know what I mean?
Crazy stuff. Yeah, and again, I'm a big believer in the supernatural, both good and bad.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we have a listener from St. Croix. Sandy's listened to us. Interesting discussion she's never heard about before. So, all right, awesome, cool.
Wow, interesting stuff, Nick, as usual.
Well,
I really have to digest what you say and go back and read the book again and apply it as I'm reading it.
There's a lot of comparisons that have been made between John Hinckley and Mark Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
When John Lennon was killed, there was a candlelight vigil in Central Park the next day, and at that candlelight vigil was John Hinckley.
Really?
Yes, and John Hinckley was arrested. When John Hinckley was arrested, he also had that book, The Catcher in the Rye, and the same kind of pistol that Mark David Chapman had. Both of them had worked at a refugee camp in, where was that at? In El Salvador? No. Where was that? Oh gosh, I didn't write it down where it's at. They worked at a refugee camp by a company called World Vision, like an organization called World Vision. They both worked there, and I think that's where their assassination training, came from. And John Hinckley's father had pumped money. It was a financer of World Vision. He was also a financer of the George Bush campaign. John Hinckley's father. And on the night of the would-be Reagan, on the night of the assassination attempt on Reagan, John Hinckley's brother and George Bush's son were supposed to meet and have dinner. It made major news. It was not a thing of, conspiracy lore. Well, like I say, it was made major news one time, and then it was scrubbed. It was on NBC that night that they were that there was a connection between Bush and Hinckley. Now, who would have benefited had Reagan killed Mr. Bush?
I actually think I've heard that before, Nick, about that dinner. I had heard that before, and the World Vision Group, I had heard that before, as well. And interesting
I don't
stuff.
know if Sirhan, had been with World Vision or anything, but I remember his favorite book was Catcher in the Rye. His favorite movie was The Wizard of Oz. Sirhan doesn't even remember actual shooting of Robert Kennedy. The last thing he remembers before doing it was a woman in a polka dot dress came up to him and said, can I have some coffee and sugar with cream and sugar, please? He didn't work there. What the hell would someone just come up to you and ask you if you want, I need some coffee, that was his trigger.
I think that would make a great show sometime, because it's also not the first time I've heard of Catcher in the Rye being involved in some pretty weird oddball stuff, so is it cryptology? Is that what, they where they go into like different words and phrases and things like that, is it called cryptology?
That sounds very interesting. I'm going to look into that, whatever it is.
Yeah, but it's basically where you do. So it's kind of like and yes, I realize I'm about to talk about a fictional movie, which is fine, but in the movie, I want to say it was Captain America: Civil War, where one of the trained assassins hears a series of words, and those series of words are what activate the soldier or something like that. And you know what? It may be a made-up movie, but I've got a really sinking suspicion that it's not a made-up concept, and it's not a made-up.
Well, I believe the military-industrial complex and the government have their hand in Hollywood and popular
Mhm.
music. And, they own some of that, to carry out their agenda. Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yeah, and I think that Hollywood does a pretty good job of the normalizing things like that. So when we hear it, it doesn't take us off guard.
Right.
It doesn't. Oh, well, didn't I see that in a movie before or something like that? So
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Engineering. Yep.
Yep.
yeah. What was the Manchurian Candidate?
hmm
Wasn't that pretty much based off of all that?
I
You
didn't see
know,
Denzel. I saw the one with Frank Sinatra, which was
Right.
about, a mind-controlled assassin or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I think the Denzel Washington version of that was also kind of along
Was it?
along the same lines. So, but yeah, hey man, great show,
So,
dude.
Yeah.
I love having you on, man, because
I
you
look forward to the second Sunday of each month.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We'll come up with something good next time
We
too.
will. I gotta put the old thinking cap on.
yeah, yeah. And Mac, thank you for, your input also. I mean, it's just the whole thing is just really, really interesting, and it definitely goes much deeper than the Beatles and just John Lennon and just this one thing. Like there are always all kinds of stuff. I find as I get older, I tend to open my mind up a little more to the conspiracies and things like that. And I was talking to one of my co-performers earlier this evening after the show was over, and we were talking about conspiracies and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not a total and complete like conspiracy guy. Like I enjoy the entertainment that conspiracies bring, but what I do find is when you actually start drilling down into these conspiracies and you start doing a little bit of the research and things like that, man, some of this is like actually based in truth,
hmm
and that's the scary part about it is
Yeah.
like you get to a point where you're like, you can't deny, like an intelligent person can't deny some of this stuff anymore.
I
Right.
And
wouldn't
then
if it wasn't rooted in truth. You know what I mean?
yeah, there's always going to be some kind of truth, and as little as it may be, and sometimes bigger than you'd ever hoped that it would be. I mean, it's crazy, and who the hell knows what we're going to find out 20, 30, 40 years from now about what's going on.
Right.
And it's just like we talked what was it usually last week or the week before last, we talked about the JFK thing. I mean, we're finding more stuff out about that all the time.
Yeah.
Years ago we would have never even considered UFOs existing, whatever. Anyone who talked about a UFO was freaking crazy.
Mhm.
But was
Now
the
the
last
Pentagon has a group studying it, and
Yep.
yeah so yeah,
Crazy.
no, love these shows with you on it, Nick. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
love
coming
being
on.
here. Love being here and talking to you.
Awesome. So, well, we will catch you again here in the next couple of weeks. We'll all get together and brainstorm on what we're going to talk about next. Who knows? Maybe it'll be that J.D. Salinger book.
Cool.
Some things like this. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it, brother.
Great to be here, Scott, Chuck, everybody.
If we don't see you, Nick, have a great Christmas.
Yes,
You
Merry
too.
Christmas to you, my friend.
Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy New Year.
All right.
Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Good
So,
stuff, man.
yeah, it's always good stuff having Nick on there, and it's good to see both the political side of it and the spiritual side of it as well.
You need to read this book. That way, the show will really tie into what you read.
Yeah, I like I said, I've gotten through some of it. I need to get through the rest of it because the whole thing just really, it's fascinating just to see. And I get it's that the guy, it's based in opinion, but however, he started to do research and things like that.
Right.
And there's just so much out there to learn just about all this stuff.
Right.
And so yeah. So what did you think about what Nick said? Anything change your mind? Anything?
What he talked about with the British intelligence and social engineering and Paul's accident, it really kind of makes you, well, is there something to that?
Yeah.
I sat here and I'm like, interesting.
And
the point that really kind of, one of those things is like how stoic the other three members were if Paul did die.
Right.
And maybe the symbolism was their way of giving hints to the public, or giving hints to the public about what really happened.
Yeah.
But outwardly laughing it all off like it's a big con, joke, what have you. So that's interesting, and that's definitely something to keep.
Can you imagine having to be childhood friends with someone, or just being in a group in a band and playing together, and then like the government saying, well, one of you isn't playing well with the others, so
I got the short straw.
right, and it could be that if that's the case, that Paul's death was a way to keep the other three in line, like
Or yeah, I mean, because we know that to keep a certain group of people in line, they have no problem killing one member to say, okay, we can do it.
Right, you guys are no joke.
So they took the strongest one, and often for maybe the three, not weak, but the more susceptible, shall we say.
Yeah, and it is interesting in that documentary that we hear John say specifically, that Paul's the boss.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting stuff.
Cool.
Very interesting.
Oh my God, here it goes. Cool. Well, another show in the books, my man.
Yeah. Hey, man, I know you're looking to get to bed. Appreciate you being on the show tonight, and
always
soldiering forward.
Oh.
All right, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us. We definitely appreciate it.
See you next week.